We have just released our own Dynasty mock draft simulator over on dynastyleaguefootball.com. This thing has been in production for like over a year now, and the time is finally here to be able to give this out to you guys, to be able to try it out, run some Dynasty mock drafts, run some rookie mock drafts if you're still waiting for your rookie drafts this year, and overall just absolutely love what I believe now to be the best Dynasty mock draft simulator in the industry. So today we're going to be running through a 10-round Dynasty rookie mock draft using this mock draft simulator, and I'm just going to run through my basic Dynasty startup strategy and talk through a little bit of why this is my strategy for superflex leagues, what positions I like to build around, which positions I like to avoid or save for later in the draft, all that kind of good stuff. So let's move over to the simulator, and this is the landing page. The link for this will be down in the description for you guys to try this out as well. But basically, this is the landing page where you just click if you want to do a Dynasty or a rookie mock draft. It's as simple as that. And then on the next page, this is where you can kind of configure and do everything that you want to do for your mock draft. So today we're going to be doing, like I said, a 10-round Superflex mock draft. This is PPR. You can choose to do tight end premium or not. I'm not going to touch that today. You can choose if you want to do a snake or a linear draft, and this will automatically change if you do a Dynasty or a rookie mock as well. Set a timer, then choose your draft position or just hit the randomize button, which is what I'm going to do 3 times. So now we are at pick 1.07, and then you just hit create draft and the draft board pops up. We are ready to go. Hit start draft, and you can move between all of the tabs. This is very similar to a lot of the other simulators that we have in the industry or that you may have seen. But basically this is the layout of it right now. So I'm up at pick 1.07. And as per it being a super flex draft, the first 6 picks were all quarterbacks. It was Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, and Kyler Murray. So the 1.07, from what I can already tell, is a weird spot in super flex, at least for the way that I like to draft, because my overall strategy for super flex is I like to really hone in on the quarterback and the wide receiver position to start out my drafts. I want to be able to stabilize those 2 positions, and I'm willing to sacrifice some of the other positions at running back and tight end to be able to do that, to build out a good, young, solid core for my Dynasty team. And unfortunately, the first 6 picks were all quarterbacks, like Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson didn't go in there. Jonathan Taylor didn't get sneaked in there. So overall, this is going to be a tough decision, because after those first 6 picks, we can move on over here. You know, the drop off at the quarterback position is probably right there. I think Kyler Murray is the last of that final tier. We can look at all of the overall players that we have left. We got Dak Prescott, Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, Trevor Lawrence. Those are the remaining top 10 quarterbacks that are available right now. And I don't really like taking any of them right now, especially whenever I have my choice of any of the other positions, you know, with Jonathan Taylor, with Chase or Jefferson, with Kyle Pitts, all of those other guys that I'd much rather just move towards them. And like I said at the beginning, I'm looking for the wide receiver position. So, I mean, at this point, it's between Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. Whoever you want here is totally fine. They're 1A, 1B. Whoever your preference is, just take one of those 2 guys, in my opinion. For me, I'm just going to take Jamar Chase here. So you can click on this blue check mark to draft the player, or you can move over and find him in the suggestions tab as well. Click on draft and you draft him right there. The board will automatically populate, and then it will also draft out the remainder of the other teams in the rest of the draft, and then at the beginning of the next round up until your pick. So now we're up again at the 2.06, and one of the things that I'm really liking is that the only quarterbacks that went in the 10 picks between Jamar Chase and now at this pick is only 2 quarterbacks went. Dak Prescott and Deshaun Watson. Obviously, Kyle Pitts went. We got the other 4 wide receivers in there. We got 3 running backs going in there. So it kind of fit out and worked out that basically me fading the quarterback here, because the tier break was right there, worked out in my favor, because now I can pick another quarterback here at the 2.06 to be able to solidify that QB1 position, and I didn't really lose all that much value because we're still working in that same tier. So looking at the quarterbacks that we have left available, we got Russell Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, Jalen Hurts, and Trey Lance. Those are the 4 quarterbacks that round out the end of the top 12. I think all of the wide receivers right now, or at least all the guys that are kind of remaining in the top 10, all just feel very similar to me. Like, I don't really want to take any one of these guys right now because I don't really have a preference. I mean, if I had to pick, I would take AJ Brown. He is, in my opinion, the best wide receiver available, and I agree with the rankings. But I don't really see all that much difference between AJ Brown and Jalen Waddle or Stephon Diggs, or even move down a little bit, we get to like Chris Godwin and Hollywood Brown and stuff. Like there's not, I don't think, all that much of a difference between all those guys, versus at the quarterback position, there is a lot of difference between a lot of these guys at the top and a lot of these guys down here, even at the beginning of the QB2 range. So I'm going to take the highest ranked player at the quarterback position on this ranking. I'm going to take Russell Wilson. And I like him more than Trevor Lawrence because I'm getting immediate production. I like him more than Jalen Hurts because I think Russell Wilson has more longevity, or at least security. I like him more than Trey Lance just because we at least have seen Russell Wilson play and be fantastic, be elite at the quarterback position. We've never really seen Trey Lance play. He had a few games last year, looked fine, but we don't really know the situation and all that is. And while the hype and potential is there, I just rather go with a player that I trust and that I've seen and is still relatively young for, you know, a quarterback in today's age, as they're starting to play up until the, you know, they're 40 or past 40 years old. So I'm going to take Russell Wilson here as my QB1. So now we're up again at the 3.07. The only quarterbacks that went were Trevor Lawrence, Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields, and Matthew Stafford. We had Waddle, Diggs, and AJ Brown go right after my pick. And then the other four were all running backs as well. This is a very running back heavy kind of area for your drafts. And like I said, I'm avoiding running backs. I am pretty zero RB when it comes to dynasty startup drafts. I just don't really like to build out teams with running backs because of their values just changing so much, not only in season, but also in the off season. It's just the most volatile position in terms of value and production every single year, that you can quickly just gain new running backs very, very cheap, or use your rookie picks in the future, especially in 2023, in what's going to be a really, really good class, on rookie running backs. So looking at the players we have available, we have Jamar Chase and we have Russell Wilson. And I think here I'm going back to the quarterback position again. Like I said, I really just like to lock down my quarterbacks in Superflex just to be totally done with them. I don't got to think about them for like the next, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, maybe. Just every single week, just plug and play two of my guys and we'll be good to go. So with the quarterbacks remaining, I am going to go to the Trey Lance route. I am going to take Trey Lance here as my QB2, give myself some upside and potential on this team, because if Trey Lance does hit, he could potentially be as productive or even more productive than Russell Wilson as my stable, solidified QB1. Now, the thing with Trey Lance, though, is that later in this draft, I'm probably going to have to prioritize a QB3 that I feel comfortable starting mostly every single week, just in case Trey Lance doesn't really pan out, or there's something weird that Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't get traded or whatever right now. That's all stuff that I don't think is a high probability of happening, but I just want to add myself some security to my roster with drafting Trey Lance. So I will make a note of that to prioritize that later on in the startup draft. But as for right now, I'm taking Trey Lance as my QB2, and I'm very happy with that for the upside and potential that we could get with him in a Kyle Shanahan-led 49ers offense, with the weapons that he has in Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and George Kittle, and the rushing upside that Trey Lance gives you. Is if he rushes for 600 or 700 yards, he's going to be a QB1 just almost by default by doing that. So if he's able to do that, and I don't think that's all that difficult for Lance to do, then he's going to be very productive for me as my QB2 with Russell Wilson. So now we're at the 4.06, and unfortunately, no quarterbacks actually went in between me taking Trey Lance and now this pick at the 4.06. So it makes me wonder if I could have maybe prioritized the wide receiver position and then still gotten Trey Lance here. That's all right. That's all, 2020 in hindsight. So looking over at the wide receivers now, because I have a good solid core with Russell Wilson and Trey Lance, I want to start prioritizing the wide receiver position now. So looking at the players that we got, we're in this mid-tier right now of some wide receiver twos with DJ Moore, McLaurin, Godwin, Deontay, some older vets in Mike Evans and Keenan Allen. You got the rookies in London and Wilson. Where do we kind of go from here? And I think there's a lot of different directions. You can go with, some stable kind of wide receiver two guys like DJ Moore, Terry McLaurin, Godwin with the ACL injury, Deontay Johnson with a new quarterback, but still very, very good and was heavily targeted, at least with Ben Roethlisberger. Here, again, this is kind of my problem with the wide receiver position right now, is I don't view a lot of these guys as very different from each other. Like, I don't really have a preference with a lot of these guys. Like DJ Moore and Chris Godwin, Deontay, all feel very similar to me. Mike Evans, Keenan Allen feels very similar to me. You can take the upside of London or Garrett Wilson as a rookie, feel pretty similar to me, So it's really hard to make a decision right now that it almost makes me want to like pivot to a different position. Unfortunately for tight end, Pitts and Andrews are gone. I would really like to get Andrews, but I don't know if in a startup draft, if I really want to go the Travis Kelce route, because I feel like that really narrows me down into being a competitive team, whether I actually want to or not in 2022. And I would rather just keep my options open just in case I'm not actually as competitive as I think I am. That could help me get a higher pick in 2023 and potentially build out better with some 2023 rookies and going forward with some more value on my team for the future. But I think here ultimately I'm just going to take DJ Moore. He's still young. He's still fantastic as a 1,200 yard receiver every single year. So him as my wide receiver 2 with Jamar Chase. I feel pretty good about that. So we're just going to see kind of what comes back to us in the 5th round and see kind of where we need to go from there in the direction that this team is heading. What ended up happening kind of worked in my favor and what I was kind of hoping for, where some more running backs were going to be taken. Travis Kelce was going to be taken, maybe a couple quarterbacks. So that worked out really well. Where if I go back to the wide receiver position, those rookies that I was kind of contemplating in the 4th round are still available there for me now in the 5th round. So that worked out really, really well. And I am actually going to take Drake London here as my wide receiver 3 and to dip into the rookie pool from this 2022 class, just to give myself some upside on potentially getting an alpha wide receiver for the Atlanta Falcons if they can figure out their quarterback position maybe next year, because I don't think Marcus Mariota is really the answer. So that gives me some longevity and building towards the future, while also giving myself insulation with the fact that he's my wide receiver 3. So I don't really have a lot of pressure to play him in my starting lineup if I don't need to, because I already have Jamar Chase and DJ Moore. 606 here, same thing. I'm not really looking at the running back position, although if Travis Etienne was there at the 606, I probably would have pulled the trigger, because I believe that he is going to be a very high valued riser moving from this time this year until this time next year. So I probably would have pulled the trigger on Travis Etienne there if he was there at 606. So again, more of the same, not looking at the running back position, because we're in this kind of weird area where a lot of these guys are either older veterans that are still kind of productive, but they're still kind of pricey for the production that they're giving you, even at their age, or other players that just we have hope for because they're starters, but they don't really have a whole lot of upside, you know? That's why I'm still avoiding this running back position as a group entirely, building with quarterbacks and with wide receivers. So now looking at the quarterback position, I'm always just checking, because like I said, I have Trey Lance. So if I want to give myself some security, just in case he doesn't pan out, I want a quarterback that I feel confident starting mainly every single week. And there's one quarterback on this list that I feel really, really strongly about fitting that kind of category as my QB3, who could potentially be my QB2, just in case of Trey Lance failing or not doing all that well, or what I expect him to be. So I'm going to take Derek Carr here. And that also, I think, basically means that I'm kind of done with the quarterback position. So I can just kind of never look at that position ever again if I don't really want to, and then prioritize the other 3 positions, especially as we get to the end of this kind of 10-round draft. Obviously, Dynasty startups will go a lot longer than this, but as we continue to get into the double-digit rounds, that's where I can hammer out a lot of the running backs that I'm looking for, maybe grab a couple tight ends that I can stream on a weekly basis, because my quarterback position is done. My wide receiver position over the next couple of rounds probably going to be mostly done, outside of taking, you know, a few flyers for my wide receiver 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever you have you. But mainly those 2 positions are going to be done. So then the back half of the Dynasty startup is going to be running backs and tight ends. So we're up at the 707, and I'm looking at this wide receiver group that we have right now. We got a couple Lions players. We got some aging vets with Michael Thomas, Allen Robinson, DeAndre Hopkins, some more mixture of veterans and younger upside players down here at the bottom too. I like Jameson Williams. I like the upside that he presents, but I don't know if I want to pair him with Drake London to get 2 rookies and double dip into this rookie class, because I don't really know if I just ultimately kind of like that or not. So I am looking a little bit lower, and the player that I am going to end up taking here is actually Darnell Mooney. This is a guy who had, you know, over 140 targets last year with Justin Fields, and I don't really know if all that, you know, target share changes all that much moving forward, just because that wide receiver group got worse, losing Allen Robinson, only adding, you know, Velus Jones and Byron Pringle and Equinemius St. Brown, like Darnell Mooney is going to be the guy. And if Justin Fields is able to let loose and, you know, be able to actually throw and run this offense, I think Darnell Mooney is going to be really, really good. And, you know, he is my wide receiver 4 technically based on drafting him, but could slot in as my wide receiver 3 if Drake London's not ready yet, or I don't feel comfortable starting him with Marcus Mariota. So I'm feeling really good about the wide receiver group that I'm building out right now, and the team with the youth and the upside and potential and value that I'm building out right now through 7 rounds. So now we're up in the 8th round, and this is probably going to be another wide receiver, basically the last wide receiver I would ultimately probably take for a long time. Allen Robinson, DeAndre Hopkins, Brandon Cooks, all aging veterans who are still pretty productive. You got some upside shots down here: Gabe Davis, Christian Watson, George Pickens, Jahan Dotson's down there as well. I think what I'm going to do, because of the wide receiver group that I have Chase, DJ Moore, Drake London, and Darnell Mooney. I feel like I'm never really going to start the player that I'm going to be drafting right now in ideal situations. Even if this is like a 3 wide receiver, start 3 wide receiver, maybe another flex, I still don't really know if I'm ultimately going to be starting this player that I'm drafting right now. So I feel like I should be swinging for the fences to see if a player either gains a lot of value or gains a lot of production, almost not really out of nowhere, but just exceeds expectations a lot, production or value wise, in 2022. And I think the only player that really fits that out of this entire group, I guess there's a couple players, but the one to me that really sticks out is Gabe Davis, because this guy is a touchdown machine. He's playing with one of the best quarterbacks, or maybe arguably the best quarterback in the league right now, or at least the one that fits his skill set the most, in Josh Allen. He's the wide receiver 2. They didn't really do all that much to stop him from potentially being the wide receiver 2 with Stephon Diggs, outside of just signing Jamison Crowder, but Crowder's not going to cut into Gabe Davis's usage and snap share. So if Gabe Davis is out there for 70+% of the snaps, or even 80+% of the snaps, I think he's going to have a really good opportunity to be not only a deep ball guy, but also a red zone guy for Josh Allen, that we've already seen already just in a short amount of time and short playing time from Gabe Davis in the first 2 years of his career. So ultimately, if he does pan out, I think that he could jump really, really high, not only in value, but also in production, to where I could be starting him every single week. And maybe, you know, if I find another wide receiver down below that is kind of an older guy, you know, like a Brandon Cooks, or maybe like an Adam Thielen kind of player, where he gives me a little bit of age, yes, but also some production that I can throw into my lineup just in case Gabe Davis is just a complete bust. But I can do that later with cheaper aging veterans that are still producing, and take the upside shot on Gabe Davis. So we're at the 9th round here, second to last pick. And like I said, I think I'm kind of done with the wide receiver position for now. I built out a very solid young core of 5 players that could feel confident starting every single week, or maybe a couple of guys need a little bit more time to develop, in which case I have a couple other players that I can just plug and play every single week. My quarterback position essentially is done. So now I really need to turn my attention to the tight end position and the running back position, because I have yet to draft a player from either one of those 2 positions. And what I think I'm going to do is actually correct that by not taking a running back, but I'm looking at this tight end position, and one guy that I absolutely love, and I'm going to be making a video about very, very shortly, is Dalton Schultz, the tight end for the Dallas Cowboys, because he has been phenomenal over the last, I mean, he was phenomenal last year, but also in 2020 as well, just in kind of not really a part-time role, but kind of sharing the workload a little bit, because Blake Jarwin was there for some of the weeks whenever he was healthy. But Dalton Schultz is going to be, I think, fantastic. I mean, they lose Amari Cooper, so that means Dalton Schultz could potentially be even more heavily targeted than what he already is. He was a top 5 tight end last year in scoring. He's absolutely fantastic, and he's cheap. I mean, I don't have to pay George Kittle or Darren Waller type prices for George Kittle or Darren Waller type production out of Dalton Schultz. So I love that. I basically have a stable tight end right now that I can just plug and play, set and forget every single week at the tight end position. I can still fill it out with a couple other players for depth, but I don't really need to prioritize other tight ends to have a group of them to where I need to stream them every single week. I feel confident in playing Dalton Schultz every single week that he's healthy and playing. So I'm basically almost, I'm going to say done with the tight end position, but I feel like I'm kind of done with the tight end position, or at least for a little while, to where I can really now hone in on this running back position here in the 10th round. And looking at the players that we have available, who is left there in the 10th round, but none other than my guy, James Conner. This is absolutely fantastic. Grabbing James Conner, who could potentially be an RB1, let alone the potential for a top 5 running back season if he were to stay healthy like he did last year. That is my running back 1 in the 10th round. This is a fantastic team overall. And again, at running back, I'm just looking for players that I know I can plug and play whenever they're actually starting, or when they're healthy, or when the starter in front of them gets injured. All those kind of players, if you can make a case for them to get, 15 touches a game if this certain situation kind of happens, then I'm all for it. I'm just going to take as many running backs as I can in the double-digit rounds to fill out that group. I'm starting James Conner every single week. So my only real decision every week is choosing between a couple of the wide receivers to play, and then my RB2 and maybe my flex as well. So here's a look at the final draft board. I absolutely love what I was able to build out with here at the 7th spot, even with not drafting a quarterback in the first round like I normally would. But I was able to get Jamar Chase, who I feel like is just as good, especially in Dynasty, in that first round range. So I absolutely love what I was able to do, and that's a little bit of an insight into my process, my thinking whenever I'm doing a Dynasty startup, and a little bit of my strategy while drafting and building out rosters in startup drafts. And of course, you can use this mock draft simulator and choose any starting position that you want to in a snake draft, and test out different strategies. Maybe you want to see what it looks like if you do take running backs early, and what kind of quarterbacks that you can get later in superflex, or build out with an early tight end or with no tight end whatsoever. Of course, you can do more rounds than what we did here with just 10 rounds, but I just want to make it short for the YouTube video. But this is ultimately my type of strategy and how I like to build out my Dynasty teams, prioritizing quarterbacks, prioritizing wide receivers, and then kind of going 0 RB and a little bit 0 tight end, unless I end up getting good value like I think I did with Dalton Schultz there. And if you made it all the way to the end of this video, I invite you to go check out this video up here where I interviewed our own Ryan McDowell about his productive struggle Dynasty startup strategy, where he's basically just taking a whole bunch of youth, a whole bunch of value, and all that other stuff. It's a fantastic strategy to see as well, and you can try that out in this mock draft simulator. So go check out that video as well, and we'll see y'all later.